My topic is about a building which is very famous in Abu Dhabi, also known as the White Fort. Qasr al-Husn is the oldest and most historical architectural structure in Abu Dhabi, the capital. First built as a watchtower in the mid-1700s, it later turned into the first residential palace of the ruling Al Nahyan family. As the UAE was formed, it served as a seat of government. Eventually, it assumed many other roles as the country developed. Today, the principal role of Qasr al-Husn is to inspire inspiration of Emirati heritage and assert national identity. Qasr al-Husn is the centerpiece of a new regional cultural center. It's being restored under the international standards of conservation recognized for the management of World Heritage assets. So I'm going to take you through a small and brief timeline that this building has went through. Qasr al-Husn began life in the 18th century as a coral and sea stone watchtower when the Beni Yas tribe moved into the coast. Sheikh Shakhbut bin Diab Al Nahyan, who ruled Abu Dhabi in 1785, transformed the watchtower into a fort. Thus, it was built by the Beni Yas tribe in Abu Dhabi to command coastal trade routes and to protect the settlement that had grown around the water sources they discovered on the island. With the watchtower in place, new settlements began to emerge and the community expanded. Successive generations of the ruling Al Nahyan family added walls, towers, decorative entrances, and residential quarters to create the ancestral home, transforming it first into an imposing fort and then eventually into an iconic place. Zayed the Great, or Zayed bin Khalifa, enlarged the fort in the early 1900s, as soon as the small village of palm huts became a town, and the rulers of Abu Dhabi divided their time between their coastal and their inland oases, such as Al Ain and Liwa. After a period of hardship following the decline of the pearling industry, the Qasr al-Husn went through a period of expansion during the exploration and discovery of oil between 1938 and the 1950s. Sheikh Shakhbut bin Sultan Al Nahyan used oil reserves to build an iconic palace that enclosed the initial fort, serving both as his residence and administrative headquarters, hence became known the Qasr al-Husn, which means palace fort. So they used it both to live in it and as well to command the government area. Until the father of the nation, Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, took power and transformed the fort into the seat of government in 1966. When Sheikh Zayed ruled Abu Dhabi, Al-Husn's importance transferred from the home of the ruling family to the governing institution. If you look closely here, you will see two forts within one. The smaller one is the historic one, and the one that surrounds it is the one that was built by Sheikh Shakhbut, the brother of Sheikh Zayed, the first president, or the first who commanded the ruling family at that time, before the formation of the United Arab Emirates. And that is the old fort that everybody speaks about. While the one that surrounds it, it is the newer fort that was built around the 1940s. The smaller fort was in a state of utter distress, and makeshift rooms were erected around the perimeter and used as different governmental departments as they became formed. Sheikh Zayed built a new majlis flush to the northern wall between the oldest tower and the largest Burj al-Hammam. In the 70s, and you can see here, the fort is all the way back there. This is how Abu Dhabi used to exist. In the 70s, in the central courtyard, this is the building in 72, as it was developed by Sheikh Zayed. And that's the fort again, and let me see if I can use this. This is the area that Sheikh Zayed developed to create his majlis. This is the old fort again, and this is the fort of Shakhbut. In the center, in this area, two buildings were formed. These two buildings, this is Sheikh Zayed discussing the plans for the fort. That's his majlis again. And these are the two buildings that were added in the 70s. One was for the documentation center, which became a permanent headquarters for that offices there. And then this one, the second one, was the office of the Crown Prince then, who is the president today, Sheikh Khalifa bin Zayed. When the government was expanding, the offices of the ministries were moved from different buildings, and Sheikh Zayed moved his administrative offices to Al-Manhan Palace close by. So these are the offices that are used inside those two buildings that we just spoke about. This is the fort again, showing it as we started having now all the streets around as the country was formed. And you see it in contrast to the city of Mutwalli being developed. In the 70s, Sheikh Zayed decided to renovate the fort. And now he was renovating the outer fort, the newer fort. And what happened was in an effort to try and do this work, they were so zealous that they started taking down everything and rebuilding again. So there is a big dispute regarding what is old and what is new, really, and whether it is a renovation or a reconstruction of that building. When they renovated in the 1972 to about the 1980s, the building was completely transformed, and they started using various companies came and began to take care of, start working on it. Makia engineering company took over, and they did the interior design, and you see that they started creating a sort of a building that was pleasing to the imagination, almost Orientalist style of a building within the fort. Then the country developed more, and as you see, now it's become part of the cultural foundation. And this area became the documentation center, and it was surrounded by all this greenery that you see. And these areas, the small areas here, which are inside the older fort, became exhibition halls that housed different exhibits. Some of them related to the documents, some of them were related to natural history, others were archaeological. So each one of these rooms started containing different types of exhibits in them. You see here, this is the oldest tower that's there, and this is again the facades of the new buildings that were created within the smaller fort. Today, this is what's happening in Qasr al-Husn. We are going through renovation, another renovation, where the walls, sorry, let me go back one more, where the walls are being stripped in order to show the basic structure, and the whole building is being re-studied and looked into in order for them to assess how it is best to be preserved. The team of historians, architects, and conservators are carefully removing parts of the thick white gypsum and cement rendering that was applied to the walls of the fort in the 1980s, suffocating the traditional structure and the walls, revealing once again the original coral and sea stone masonry used in traditional Emirati structure. Here you see again elements of that as they are working. This is the fort in detail. So let me explain again. This is the older fort, which we think dates back to the early 17th century. The oldest part of it is this one. This is the oldest extent tower that's there. This is the fort that was built by Sheikh Shakhbout in the 40s. What are the traditional materials that were used for building this? We believe the traditional materials that were used here, each stage of expansion throughout the 18th century to the 19th centuries, builders used coral and sea stone gathered from ocean beds and local reefs. These stones were set in place using mortar made from lime and local sand and crushed sea shells. The shell's reflective effect caused the fort's walls to sparkle in the sun, offering a welcome coastal navigation tool to the region's merchants. Mangrove was used to make the flooring and the roof structure due to its natural strength and durability. One of the most ingenious aspects of the structure is the traditional bargeal ventilation system, effectively an ancient form of air conditioning. Recessed arches built into the exterior walls would direct the prevailing sea breezes into the interior rooms via a network of narrow airways. Who lived in the fort? As you see, the outer fort, we know, used to be used as the residential area of the ruling family. The rooms were divided between the different members of the family. Some of the rooms would have a space between them. They call it a gati, and it was used as a sort of a bathroom area where they kept where they bathed or washed or changed, but it was never used as a outhouse or a toilet, because everybody that wanted to go out and use that service, they would go outside the fort in order for the fort to be kept clean. This is the way they used to have the rooms. They would have a bed, and then they would have seating on the floor. The bed usually is raised. In the Gatiya area, this is the area, they would have a water clay pot that holds water and maybe some utensils here to use for the washing and bathing and taking everyday life. These are images of the fort's gate, and what you see here, you see Sheikh Shakhbout during the time that he lived in it. As you see here, this is the older fort, and you see it already in a state of dilapidation because he built the outer one, and that's where he was living. This is Sheikh Zayed entering the main gate of the fort. These are details of the forts. That's me a long time ago within that door. The same door. Now, this is the highest part of the fort, which is this large tower. They call it the Burj al-Hamam, and it's because there were a lot of pigeons in that area. This square area, it is really not a tower, but it is the main quarters of Sheikh Shakhbout where he lived. This is the inside of that square area that was used by Sheikh Shakhbout. And you can see they used to have first this sort of seating, the mats that I was talking about, and eventually with the increase in oil wealth, we started having Western furniture introduced to that area. You see the windows are low because they used to use them as a ventilation mechanism to cool out the spaces that they are in, and to allow them to, of course, see. This is the most decorative column that we have in the fort. This is the Murabba'at Shakhbout that I was telling you about. It is the square tower that was used by him. In the winter, they all lived in the lower floor. In the summer, they will all reside up, and they will keep the same room. So if the sheikh lived in the bottom one here, he would live here in the top one, and then receive his guests over there. This is the private entrance for the women, which is placed in the back of the fort. It is a small door that allows them access to the exterior. And as I said, they would go out to get to the sea or to use the premises outside. This is the same murabba'a that we were talking about of Sheikh Shakhbout, but under renovation at present. That's the same door that I showed you just now, which is the ladies' door. And look at it now, it is under restoration. Again, they have tried to strip the walls in order to see what sort of building materials were used. And again, these were the building materials that were placed in the 70s. What is very interesting about the fort is the presence of about 50 to 60 wall carvings that are like these all over the fort. This one in particular has the two deer, and we believe it could signify the name of Abu Dhabi from that to denote to this. The other drawings or the other wall reliefs are of different vegetable and floral motifs, as you see here. But one particular important one is this one, which has 1359 on it in Arabic or Hijri, and that means it corresponds to 1938, which is the year that it was built by Sheikh Shakhbout. And this is how these images or these carvings would appear on the walls inside the rooms of the 1940s fort, the larger one. My relationship with the fort, that's me arriving to that fort at the age of 5 with Sheikh Zayed. So I've lived in this fort and I've used the premises, and then eventually as I grew and became an adult, I came back and I worked in that fort, and I used to carry the keys for it, as I said, because I did the first architectural survey of the building and did the first architectural drawings and floor maps of the building. Today, I continue my relationship with the fort by producing another book, and that's a book on introducing that fort to children and to the youth of adults of tomorrow, speaking to them about the details of that fort. This will be published in the International Book Fair in Abu Dhabi next month. That's basically it, very simply.
Thank you so much, Reem. Thank you.